Welcome to all you future educators, current educators, and lifelong learners who are looking to blend technology, teaching strategies, and emerging trends to create exceptional learning experiences. Welcome to another video where we're looking at building materials for our learners in a lesson development software, and specifically we're looking at Rise 360. Now Rise 360 is an easy software that allows us to go in and build interactive and engaging materials and just all around better content for our learners. But that ease of building also comes with the thought that you might be able to go in and just start putting things in there and placing the interactions and making things work. And that can lead to a disorganized course that takes multiple revisions and costs us time. And we don't want to do that. So an easy way to look at getting around that is by a process called storyboarding. By creating our course in a storyboard, we can go ahead and lay out a logical flow, make sure that we have a consistent look and feel throughout it, and more easily collaborate with partners before we make a large investment in the time of actually building the course. Now, there's a lot of storyboarding software out there, but one that's easy to use with Rise 360 is actually just Microsoft Word. So what I want to go ahead and do is take a project we've been working on where we're trying to digitize out a board game instruction manual, and we're specifically going to look at, can we storyboard out the villain phase of this game? So let's go ahead and jump in there and see how a storyboard might help us make that part of the instruction manual just a little bit easier and better when we build it. So as we get started on our project, the first question that comes up is, why would we want to look at doing a storyboard in the first place? While we're building this villain turn in Rise 360, are there advantages to storyboarding rather than just going in and building? And there are three main reasons that we might want to look at storyboarding first. First, we have clarity and step-by-step flow. The villain turn has multiple phases, and so a storyboard would help us break them down and make sure that they're clearly explained out to the player. Second, we want to have interactivity throughout the lesson so that it doesn't get boring to the player. So using a storyboard helps us plan out our interactive blocks, like labeled graphics or accordions or quizzes or anything else we want the player to be able to do. Lastly, it really helps with collaboration, because the more that we can put into the plan before we start building, the more time we can save on the back end. So it allows us to be able to send this document to multiple parties that could view it and give us feedback before we have to take the time to actually go in and build it into Rise 360. So ultimately, you want to think of storyboarding kind of like planning your strategy before actually taking a turn in a game. It helps us avoid unnecessary mistakes and make sure that everything flows correctly. Now when storyboarding, there's something to keep in mind, and that's that we can either storyboard an entire course, a large item, or we can do a smaller item, which in this case would be a lesson within a course. So for our example that we're using, we could do the entire instruction manual in a storyboard, which would be the equivalent of a Rise 360 course, or like we said earlier, we could just focus on the villain phase, which would be the equivalent of a lesson in Rise 360. Whether or not you do a full course or a lesson, the same process applies, so you could do either one or both of them if necessary. So let's talk about how to create a general storyboard in Microsoft Word. When building one of these in Microsoft Word, I like to start with an overview table of what we're going to be looking at, and there's usually 4 elements I like to have in that table. First is going to be either your lesson title or your section title, however you want to break this down. But that's clearly going to define out our individual sections that we're going to be building throughout the lesson. Second, I want a column for content breakdown. And this is going to kind of organize the key concepts that I want to cover in each either lesson or section of that lesson. Next, I want to have a column for interactive elements. And that's where I'm going to try to plan in the different type of interactions that I think would work best for the content that I'm trying to cover in that area. This allows me to make sure that I have an interaction easily placed throughout each section of the lesson. Last, I want to go ahead and have a column for any media requirements that I'm going to need, because if I can gather most of these media elements like images and videos and audio before I actually build the lesson, it will allow me to have a smoother process when building it and ultimately save me time in the long run. So let's take a look at what this would look like if I was actually designing our villain turn in a Rise 360 storyboard. So here you can see I have my overview section of my storyboard started. And in this, I've already got my section title, breakdown, interactive elements, and media needs listed. Now, brainstorming through this section of the lesson, I know that there's going to be 5 sections that I want in here, 5 pieces of content that I need. So I'm going to go ahead and fill those out in the first area. So we have step 1, villain activation. We have step 2, which is boost cards. And we have step 3, which is encounter cards. And then we'll wrap it up with a summary. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and make one extra column in here because I know of an interaction I'm going to want, which is going to be a quiz. Alright, so just for sake, I'm going to go ahead and center those, make it look a little bit nicer. Then I'm going to need to fill in the type of content that I want in one of these sections. So for the introduction, I'm going to give an overview of what the villain phase is and briefly list out the steps. I also know I need to include rising threat on the main scheme, which is not something that actually goes with the villain activation. It's something on the side. So I know those are 2 pieces of content I need to complete in the introduction. Now for interactive elements, when I'm thinking through this, I know that I'm going to have a list of steps here, so I might want to use the list feature, but that's a little bit less interactive. It would work, it would make it look pretty, but I don't know if I want that because of the lack of interactivity on it. It's just a list that comes in. But there's also one in there I could use, which is a procedure block, which that one might be a little bit more interactive. And as I think about it and I move forward, I think I will go with the procedure block, so I'm going to go in here and just highlight that one, making sure I know to myself that that's the one I want. Then I need to start thinking about what do I need in there to make these things work. Well, 1, I'm definitely going to want an image of the villain card. 2, I'm going to make sure that I have a scheme where I can do increased threat on it. Because again, that's a piece that will need to be in the introduction, not on its own. Then I'm going to need 1 card for each item in the list of steps. And that's going to be where I tell them step 1, step 2, step 3 are these, but I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. That will be later. But I want to make sure I have an image of a card in each of those, so it kind of makes it appear more as this is what needs to be done in that stage. It gives them that visual reminder. And now I've already got it started. I've got my content breakdown, my interactive elements, my media needs. I can see the steps that this is going to go through. I'm going to go ahead and fill out this table, and then I will show you guys what that final table looks like before we move on to the next section. Alright, and there you've got it. I've got my information built into my table. I'm going to go in and make sure that I highlight out the actual interactions that I want to build. If I have multiple ones, I can go ahead and highlight label graphic if I want, but I want to make sure that I know exactly the ones that I'm going to build and why. Then I have my list of media needs that I can go out and grab, and we should be ready to start moving on to the next phase of storyboarding and then finally of building this project. But that's what it should look like in Microsoft Word if you guys do an overview table similar to the way that I do it. Now once we have our overview table of our storyboard built, we can actually start building in a storyboard for each portion of the lesson. This detailed draft will allow any reviewer to give comments about areas that need to be addressed. So in this detailed section, we would actually include some of the text that we would want in there. We would also try to put in placeholders for any images or interactions we have. We want this to look as close to the final product as we can get so that we have a general idea of what we'll be building in Rise 360 and what it will look like. So let's go ahead and take a stab at this while trying to build out just our section on using the boost cards out of our villain phase for the Marvel Champions game. So to get started on this, you can see that I've gone ahead and taken the section title column on the left hand side and built it out into headers down below in the detailed section. And then I've left little content areas for me to start building the content. Now for our boost card section, I need to make sure that I go in and I talk about how the boost icon affects the villain's activation, and I need to have a label graphic. I don't need to have the 2 images because those are going to be part of the label graphic, but I need to make sure I have my placeholder for the label graphic. So when I scroll down, I've already got some text over on the side that I've created for this to be able to describe out this section. So I'm going to go ahead and copy, and then I'm going to paste it into the section. Now I'm going to go in and format it to the way I want it to look. So I'm going to use this beginning piece to make it look a little bit more like a header. And then I'm going to do indents on some of the actual text itself. This one will be a subheader, so it'll be a little bit smaller, but it'll follow the same format. And then I'll go ahead and have my text inside of this. I'm going to take out these numbers and not do a numbered system, but just have it as these individual sections and chunks below. And then we'll go ahead and move those over too so we can get our formatting started. Lastly, I'm going to go ahead and go down here and finish out what I need this section to look like. So now I've got it kind of organized how I want it to go, but I'm going to go ahead and finish working on some of these header pieces. I know in Rise I can only have subheaders, so I'm going to do something that looks similar to this and label out this section as well. And do it with the final section here. Now that I've got my text kind of placed, I need to go in and put in where I want my placeholder, because this is looking somewhat like what I want at this point. So what I'll go ahead and do is I will go into Insert and I'll go to Shapes, and I will go ahead and just grab a square and start putting things where I want. Now to do this one for my labeled graphic, I think I'm going to put it in here where I need to show them what the different boost icons look like. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and draw a decent sized square, and I'm going to hit this and change the word wrap effect because I do want the words to wrap around it. Once I get that done, I can start maneuvering this so that it fits into the square where I want it. And I actually want it to be at the bottom of this section as much as possible. So let's go ahead and start working around with the size so that it starts fitting into the area I want. Alright, so that should do that, and then I can go ahead and make some kind of label on this where it says this is going to be the labeled graphic describing the different boosts. That way anybody that is reviewing this with me can tell exactly what I'm trying to stick in that zone. Now I've got my words in there, I've got the layout going, I've got where my interaction is. I'm looking at this and I think I might want one more graphic up on the top just to make it look a little bit better because I've got it pretty text heavy. So I'm going to go ahead and insert another shape. I'm going to insert another box, and then I'll go ahead and do the word wrapping on it, make it a little bit of a size that I think it'll be nice on there. And this one I'll just put in as an aesthetic image of the villain or something similar. And that way, again, whoever's reviewing this can see that I'm going to add in additional graphics that don't really explain anything, but it just makes it look nicer. And I can get a general idea of the way that this boost section is looking. When I go to build this, I want the boost section in Rise 360 to look as similar to this as possible because I know that this layout is starting to work. I like it. I like the way it looks. And hopefully the reviewers and the clients that are looking at this also say that that is acceptable, and that's what we're going to build going forward. So this should look fairly similar to what we're going to build in the Rise 360 lesson itself. Ultimately, using Microsoft Word or another storyboarding tool ends up helping you keep your Rise 360 courses organized, efficient, and ensures that you have enough interactions in there to keep it engaging. It allows you to plan your content, structure your interactivity, and gather your media assets before you start building, ultimately saving you time and effort in the long run. So hopefully we've shown you guys the benefits of using storyboarding when doing Rise 360 lessons. And we're hoping we've also shown you that Microsoft Word is a completely appropriate and easy to use program to knock out those storyboards. Now I have no doubt that there's other storyboarding software out there or other storyboarding processes that may be out there. So if you've seen some of those or if you've done some of those, go ahead and post them in the comments section and maybe we can compare those out and see which ones work better in which situations. Now in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and keep playing in Rise 360 and building out our digital instruction manual. So if you want to see some of those videos on how to do the things in 360 to make that happen, make sure you hit the bell icon so that you've got first access when those videos are available. Also, if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the channel because we're always trying to get new content out there, whether it's Rise 360 or other tools and techniques to make educational experiences better for the learners. So in the meantime, we do appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and we hope that you guys keep creating more things for your learners. So until the next video, keep on creating and make those educational experiences just that much better. All right, thanks guys.